And prof was like, till the day they are burning it down by not a mischief but trying to do something interesting, I will pay for it. And that nag and that thing
Freedom.
which they,
Yeah.
yeah, $1 million device and they can touch all the buttons. They can do whatever
Yeah.
they want. They have all the access to all the labs 24/7. Not something which is very, it might be very weird. People will think he's asking such a big question. But it's a very small advice. Labs are not accessible 24/7 in India. How can you expect a student to do an experiment only once a week?
Hi everyone. Today's guest is someone who perfectly represents what I call India's quiet research revolution. Meet Sarthak Antal, a brilliant mind from NSUT Delhi, who is now pursuing his PhD in electrical and computer engineering from Purdue University. Here's what makes his story fascinating. Sarthak didn't follow the usual master's then PhD route. He went straight into a PhD at Purdue, backed by an already solid research journey that started back in his undergrad. Welcome, Sarthak.
Thank you, Janesh. Really kind words. And okay, that was, he has portrayed with a lot of very good sugar. And I would not say sugar coating, a lot of good sugar. But yeah, this is true. I did directly come for a PhD. I tried to skip 2 years of master's. And yeah, I think we'll discuss more about this and then I'll tell you what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and before we get into that, tell us your story, right? Where do you come from in India? And what made you think of doing a PhD? How was your undergrad experience in SUT and so on?
Okay.
Your background.
So I am a born and brought up Delhiite, and then I went to NSUT, which is in Delhi. So I have lived most of my life in Delhi. When I went for my undergrad, I was before my undergrad, like when I had like 2 months of like some time to like just rest after my JE days. My dad being an electrical engineer, he was like, let's try something interesting. He tried to introduce me to some kind of microcontroller stuff, some kind of, just here and there, wiring here and there, just showing me stuff. And it turns out that he was like, try this field. Maybe it works out for you. I think it might work out for you. No pressure, but it might work out for you. I went into my college. First semester is very generic, very normal. For my college, it was very interesting that from my batch, they had started to introduce some specific advanced courses of different fields from the second semester. So I had courses about data structures and algorithms in my second semester, and the basics of electronics, which is called as device physics, in my second semester. And I then realized that maybe this device modeling is making more sense in my head. I've always been a very much I love physics more than maths and everything. I've always been a physics guy. I would not say nerd, not that smart, but physics guy. And then I realized that electronics is something which is maybe making a bridge ahead of it. Mechanical was something which I did not got a lot of chance to pursue because I had already entered in, like, I got an admission into the electronics branch. I did not get a lot of exposure to mechanical, but I think 2 options were enough for me to be confused. Third one would have made my life mess. And then as I went ahead, COVID hit and I was like in lockdown. I think that lockdown phase changed my life because before that I was kind of struggling with the courses, and during lockdown I got some extension before my final exams and everything. I came back home. Coming back home from the hostel is always a good experience to study. You get very hyper focused study, and I tried reading a bit more about these things, and eventually I've always been brought up with a mindset that my dad and always all of them have been in like job, private sector or a government sector. Both my parents are working, and they always told me that you can always do job, make a living for yourself, but why not expand your horizon? If you're going to a good college, think of something greater, think of having something of your own. And then I realized that my passion for physics combined with what I'm liking in electronics and with a bigger goal to make something of my own led to path of electronics engineering. A lot of people would very strongly disagree and say that, oh, why not have a startup in software? Way easier. You can have easier influx into things. You can easily get into things and easier to manage everything. I personally always felt that, so this is what my mom used to say, the easier to get, the easier to lose. And that's like, it's like either you make a niche for yourself and do something which is tough to compete, or you fight the rat race. I had already fought the rat race for my JE. I was not in the mood to do it again. Maybe that was also something that pushed me away from software. I was like, no, I don't want to do something which I just have to be very, very rigorous in practicing and maybe not unlocking locks. And that's why maybe it turned towards EC. And then I was very lucky to find one of the labs in my college, which actually allowed, like, is a tinkering kind of lab, which allowed me to do whatever I want. So all of my COVID me and my best friend, we used to drive from. So I live in East Delhi. My college is in West Delhi. So as soon as whenever there was time and whenever we were allowed to travel, we used to pick up my dad's car, run to the lab, go there, spend hours, spend days, because it was also COVID, so classes were online.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped because I could take my classes online from the lab and do whatever I'm doing and then
Very cool.
make things better. Yeah, I think that initial nag where I saw that, oh, maybe this is giving me a brighter edge towards things. I'm able to realize, make things happen in real life. And I still remember, so we have something called an oscilloscope where you see signals, you make circuit, you see signals. The first time I made a very, very small circuit and I could see it on an oscilloscope, I was very amazed. I was like, wow, I made something that works. And I just cannot, and it's not typing a code and saying that, oh, correct or wrong result, which is also a great thing. No offense to them. But that thing, maybe that feeling, that excitement is what I've been chasing so far, is what makes me happy today. I made something that works. So simple as that. Also goes for cooking. I made something, it looks very good. It's very tasty. Also goes for cooking. Yes. Yeah.
No, very cool. Very interesting. So you're saying how this is a rewarding experience, something that that you weren't able to kind of get in India. So continue on that path.
I would, again, I would not very strongly comment on, again, being very politically correct. I would not very strongly comment that you cannot find opportunities in India. If you find now that I am here, I really, because I'm more aware, I get to see that, oh, there were a lot of opportunities in India, which I missed because I was very much focused. So the biggest mistake which I did was that I thought that, oh, I'm a ECE grad. I need a lab. I need to be in my own college. No other college will take me. They will not help me because I know that there are researchers doing my kind of research better in other colleges. But I did not approach them. And that was the biggest mistake I did. When I came here, I found other people who had done that, like people who are from less hardware, like more software-oriented job fields. They would approach different professors and they're like, we'll do everything online. I always thought that my field is very hardware-oriented. I need a lab, which in it was hindsight, I would not very false. It is very true. But that does not mean that you cannot approach professors from other colleges, talk to them. They can give you access of different softwares. Not all of hardware is actually hardware. A lot of it is also on a CAD tool and stuff like that, which you can learn. So that toggles. And then as undergrad, you have to realize that is very tricky because every semester you're getting bombed by not advanced courses, but by new courses altogether. So like what I took in third semester and what I took in fifth semester is a complete different branch of a PhD now that I see. I see a guy sitting next to me who's doing a PhD in something which I used to hate in my fifth semester. But that becomes a completely new field, right? So it's like handling all that together. But that being said, what I was initially talking to you about was that this is very true, that I came to US when I was 21 and a half. And that being said, a lot of my friends were in India. They matured differently as compared to what I did. I really think that what experiences I obviously tougher at times, very like new ways of talking to people. For example, a very small example I give to everyone when I talk to them, when I talk to my juniors about coming here, is like the first day I came here, I went into I was looking into my building. I went into my building and I was like, I need to go to the second floor. I just asked the janitor, I need to go to the second floor. Where's the lift? And he's like, what's the lift? Who will lift you? Who's going to lift you? And I was like, no, I want to go up. It was like, oh, you want an elevator? And I was like, oh, yeah, I want an elevator. So, things like this, very small instances, help you understand that, oh, wow, such different things perceived so differently. And this is maybe a very naive example, but I'm telling you how these small experiences actually, I think, changed what Sarthak was 2 years ago when I just came here. And people who have been with me throughout, like when I go back home, I go back home every December, I talk to my mom, let's say very small things, she would realize, oh, Sarthak has changed. Sarthak is different now. He does things in different way now from what he did. Living alone, living abroad, does a lot of good things if you take everything in a... So one thing which I really think is, if you take things in a good way, in a positive way, they'll help you out. Not speaking just for the podcast, say that, oh, I have to be very ideal. No, it is true. 2 years ago, I used to crib about cooking. Now it's a hobby for me. I cook when I'm like, oh, I cannot work anymore. Let me cook. And now it's a skill I have. So this perspective, how perspective changes your life, is something you realize when you come here, out of your shell.
Absolutely right. Yeah. And which all universities did you apply to, and how was the moment when you finally received a go-ahead from Purdue?
I applied to 8 universities, and I was planning to apply to 9, but I ended up applying to 8 because I was not able to finalize some professors in one. So I applied to Purdue, I applied to UMich, I applied to Georgia Tech, I applied to Texas A&M, I applied to UCSD. I applied to University of Southern California, and then I had applied one of my applications which did not go through finally. I could not finalize was Stanford, and then one last application which I remember was missing on the name. I think it was Maryland, University of Maryland.
Got it.
So
Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah. And then I got my go. I had been giving some interviews with professors, and I finally got my go ahead with like, oh, I'm finalized. I will definitely go this place. I find this prof very cool. That was around April that year. So I like cried for a few months. Yes, for 3 months, very much. Yes. Oh, and the last university I was not able to recall was Columbia.
Correct.
Yeah.
All very good universities. I think any admit, would have been something to celebrate. But Purdue is Purdue, so they have their own the gravitas and quality of research that you do there. Yeah.
So this was my major reason was like my research aligned most with my professor, and that's why like, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah. Right. And what do you think made your profile stand out that you were able to get a direct PhD, go ahead and you apply to these universities?
I would honestly say that it was not me being very confident about my profile. I was not. I'll tell you. I'll be very honest with, because I think there are students who are listening to this who might take this as a reference. When I was in my seventh semester of college, GMAT, I had to GRE, TOEFL, I had to write SOPs, very much confusion, everything. I was not very sure that I need to go for a direct PhD. So in all of the colleges, I had applied that, oh, I want a PhD, but I'm fine with a master's as well because I don't have a master's degree, so they might not consider me. But it was my college seniors, and I was very lucky to find another senior from BIT Misra. She guided me throughout the process. She gave me the confidence that apply for it. Worst case, you get a master's, you don't get a PhD. And then when I interviewed with the profs, they were more concerned about what basic fundamentals have developed. So I think that it is a field to field thing. Maybe for maybe it's different. I'm pretty sure it's different for different fields. Some fields require a lot of research, but my kind of field, chip designing, requires you to have very strong fundamentals. It's like electronics is something which even like the top people, they'll just try to do basic laws, very fundamental laws, not very mathematically heavy. At times it gets mathematically heavy, but not very mathematically heavy, very fundamental. So this is what I had a discussion with my prof after I came here, like last year, when he was admitting the next batch of students. I was like, Prof, what did you see? Why did you choose me? He was like, I look for two very basic things. He's like, fundamentals are clear. Is he hungry enough? Does his hunger satisfy what I want him to do? If I see those two things, why not? I think everyone can learn, and that's what his approach is. The good thing about him is that he was a direct PhD at his time, so he had seen that journey. So he was like accustomed to seeing that, oh, maybe. And that being said, it also depends on what professor you're applying to. So again, all facts out.
Yeah. But even getting to the interview stage, getting to the interview, there's a human interaction that helps you, that enables you to make an impression on the professor. But in order to get to the interview stage, how would you advise students who are wanting to follow a similar path? What are some do's and don'ts? What are some things that you would advise them to have shine in their profile, have shine in their admission application?
I would very strongly. So again, some of these things might be very generic, because again, these are general rules which even I heard, I applied, it worked, it will work for everyone. So one thing which I really thought worked very well for me was that when people say cold email and spam profs, people go by a very wrong approach. And I did this mistake when I was trying to find an internship. You email thousands of professors. None of those emails are very specific. When you are approaching any professor, he does not. So let's say I do chip designing. I will not approach a professor by saying, oh, hi prof, hi whatever, XYZ. I like chip designing. I like doing electronic. So I do analog circuits. I like doing analog circuits. You do analog circuits. And then people are being smart. So they'll do ChatGPT. It's like, oh, I like these 2 papers of yours. Very good. I want to continue doing research with you. Can I approach you? Profs don't want that. They're looking for some very basic nags. They're looking for 2 things. They're looking for, oh, I like your work because this is something which I have done in my past. I just cannot say that, oh, I like vanilla ice cream. I have never tasted it. That makes no sense, right? I should have tasted it once in my life. And I would say that, oh, Prof, this is the kind of research I've done or this is the kind of work I've done in my internships or in my undergrad research with professors or in my undergrad labs. This is the kind of work which you are doing. And I see that the next step for me to implement or to go ahead in my field is by doing what kind of research you are doing. And then I read these 2 or 3 papers of yours, and I found that, oh, the way that you implemented such thing or the way that you did this kind of experiment was very fascinating. It has to be very specific. And out of 100 professors, maybe 10 or 15 will reply, but they do reply. They do reply. And then it's a very rigorous process. But you have to be very specific for them to take up your email and look into it. And then secondly, from what I've seen as a student who has an advisor who's running a lab, professors don't have time to read all the emails. Highlight things. For example, highlight small things. For example, my undergrad advisor has a very good research background. Plus my internship advisor. I did my internship in Canada under a Mitacs program. It's called a Mitacs funding program. That professor is very renowned in his field. And I used to mention his name that I have worked with this professor highlighted, and this is what helped me. And then at some point, I have also seen people asking their professors, undergrad internship professors, to email some professors that, oh, this is my kid. I've seen him work. I will give him a letter of recommendation, but I also want you to consider him on priority because I like him. So it builds upon, it's like, most of the students realize this very late, and it's a very tricky thing, but doing everything correct and perfectly is important. And it's tough, but you have to think 2 years ahead that, oh, I might need an LOR for this guy. I need to leave an impression. I need to put work in his course. I need to learn this better. I need to take a recommendation from this professor in my internship. I need to work hard for him. I need to leave an impression. Just working hard might not cut the chase, because getting admits in these like dream colleges and like the top 15, 20 colleges, everything also depends on reputation, right? If you have a good reputed professor backing you up, people will very much like you, right? It's again, everything in the end of the day is a advertisement based game. So
No, you said it'll be generic advice. It's not. It's very specific and very actionable for students who are listening to this. Essentially, to paraphrase what Sarthak has said, folks, when you're applying, you have to make sure that, as you said, not just reference something specific that the professor has done, but you need to tie it to something specific that you have done. And only that lands the impression. And if possible, back it up with, or if you have experience and working with other professors, other names in the industry, in the field that's relevant to you, include those names. That's going to help out. So combination of both the things. These are very actionable pieces of advice, and I want to therefore repeat and call it out again for the viewers.
Yeah, makes sense.
You mentioned that MITAC funded internship. How was that experience? How was Canada? Which part of Canada were you in? And was that your first experience out of India? So how that?
Yes, that was my first experience ever in an international flight. Everything was very first. And I went to the northernmost part of Canada. I went to Alberta. And a random story, and this is a very interesting story. I went there, and the first day it's like 0 degrees Celsius there. And Alberta is like very cold. They go to minus 40 degrees Celsius. So I went there at 0, and I'm like wearing 3 jackets. I'm like chilled cold. I have to go to get my bank account open and everything. And I go there, and it's just like, 2020 summer. COVID has just officially ended. People have started that my year was the first year after the COVID break where they started taking interns back into the country.
Yeah.
So got lucky that way as well, because going there was very helpful. I went there, and that guy is like the bank manager sitting in half sleeves. My 0 degrees Celsius sitting half sleeves, and he's like, "You're sick." I was like, "No." He was like, "You're sick. You're wearing so many clothes." I was like, "No, I'm not sick. It's so cold." He was like, "No, it's not cold. It goes to minus 40." And that was the first experience. I was like, "Oh wow, they're humans. Work so differently." But yeah, random story. But I just wanted to, I thought.
Yeah. That's the kind of cultural shock that people deal with. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is very, very, very much evident when I even move across, because I always lived in Delhi. So when I move across the world, cultural shock is like, wow, so interesting. But yeah, coming back to my experience in Canada, I think that internship, I would solely say that internship was a result of 2 years of hard work in my undergrad, second year and third year undergrad. Like putting in a lot of effort, got me enough letter of recommendations and enough points on my resume to land that internship. As I said, you build upon step. You cannot leave everything. So that helped me get that internship. And then when I went there, it was like I learned, I would say I relearned and restaged a lot of things of how to do research, because again saying you have to, even if it was my mistake, I did not find very good professors in India as well. They are very, very good and learned professors. I know in my field, so I'm pretty sure in every field. So approach them. The difference it makes is you get a methodical way of doing things. Doing things methodically in a research background is in while doing research is very important. If you're not methodical, research is so wide, it's such old fields, you'll get lost. He used to teach me ways of, when I first met him, he was like, oh, you have some skills of making circuits and everything, let's see what to do in research. And first week he gave me some task and I horribly failed, very bad. I remember he was like, Sarthak expected more after the interview. And then I remember that prof teaching me ways of like, this is what I do, this is how you should do, and work it up. You have one more week. And
Yeah.
they teach you interesting ways. They give you immense amount of resources. They give you whatever they have, and you learn what is happening at the cutting edge research. Like, what is the cutting edge research that is happening? Like reading a lot of papers and understanding how to, it's also a struggle and journey for undergrads who are just starting to learn about the field to understand literature. Literature is a very specific way to be, there are very specific way in which they are written. To understand those things, make sense out of them, and then come up with something new. And to, get that, oh, wow, this is how it might work. This is how human brain has a habit of working in cycles. You need to, but the first cycle, to leave it, to bring it out of inertia is the toughest. And once you start making a brain work in a specific way, that's the same happens in a PhD. Says that the first and second year is the toughest, and then you are in the cycle. And that, I think, that research nag which I got was from Canada. There's one big thing, one big, very, very big learning. Second big and the best thing which I got from Canada is I got people who are very much aligned to my goal. Finding, being from a college in Delhi who has a very good, very, very, very good placement, all of my friends got into, like, went into jobs. Rarely, I only know two people from my batch, including me, who came for a direct PhD. One went to Carnegie Mellon and others me. So finding your cohort who is preparing with you is very important in these processes, because it's a very holistic process. I cannot read my SOP and I think no one can say that, oh, it's a good SOP, this is a bad SOP. It's like everyone has an opinion. So I found that cohort which like I prepared for GRE with them, I prepared for TOEFL with them, I wrote my SOPs with them, everything.
Yeah.
So that was the two biggest gains that I got from Canada, I think.
Makes sense. Yeah. Right. And that's actually one thing you mentioned, the way the brain gets trained. It's a good segue into the next question I had, which was about how your work spans chip design and biosensing. Right. And my question is really, how did your interest come to this intersection of electronics and biology? How did you get to this point?
Okay, that's actually very interesting. So my initial lag was always towards robotics. I wanted to do something. Every electronics engineer and mechanical engineer has at some point been way highly fascinated by robotics. Oh, let's do robotics. We'll do robotics. And I started doing robotics in my undergrad labs. Started building some few kits and bits here and there about robotics, like robotic arm movement and stuff and that. And then eventually I realized that one day I met my undergrad advisor and he's like, what you are doing, how is it helping anyone? So again, having good figures in your life who challenge you and question you and, just come and shake you is very important. And he was like, what you are doing, how is it relevant? You're making a robotic arm. What do I do? There are machines who do it now. What are you doing special? Oh yeah, maybe it was your first time, but what is a bigger picture? Find a bigger picture, find a bigger goal. From there, I started, looking up into different devices. Back then, I was not into research papers. I was more into, products. I used to like look up, oh, I want to make a product. Like second year young mind, I'll have a startup, I'll make a product by the end of my second year, by the end of my third year. Very energetic. So I used to look at products. And then I saw a product by an American company which was making robotic arms for doing surgeries. And that was very fascinating. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then started exploring the knife for what can people do with bio stuff, bioelectronics and stuff like that. Luckily, my dad also works in a firm which makes biomedical devices and ventilators. He works, so there's a firm called Medtronics. My dad works in that, and his knack and his motivation towards that, oh wow, Sarthak, this is a promising field, people need that in India, things are very expensive for Indians to afford, make something like that. Is maybe, I think, that one nag that helped me start this process of maybe, yes, bio is something which I can accommodate into my research, into my interest, and that might lead to a bigger goal.
Got it. Yeah. Let's talk about something lighter, accommodation. How do you find a place to stay? And
Okay,
what would
but
you suggest? Yeah.
yeah, so I think it was a bigger fight when I was trying to find something for Canada. But again, once I'm in the process, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
For when I was finding it for US, it was easy. The best thing about us being Indians is it's true. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. It's a nation which is very driven towards education, and we have a
Mm.
habit of running out. So I found a Telegram group which had links to different WhatsApp groups to different 7 or 8 universities in Canada. From there, I found a WhatsApp group, and I was very clueless. How would I find someone? And then I saw the trend, what people are doing. So people used to put up that I'm coming to on this date, I'm leaving on this date, I'm in this university, I'm looking in accommodation. And then what I used to do was I used to reply to people's messages that, oh, you are coming to University of Alberta, I'm coming to University of Alberta, similar dates, can we share an accommodation? Through that, I made enough. I made a really great friend who's from ITKGP, and he introduced me to a bigger group of people. And then we had like 14 Indians living in the same like housing facility, and that's how I find. So I think the thing that you think that it's tough,
Yeah.
it's not. Indians are everywhere. You just need to the one is it crazy trick is either on Facebook or Telegram, find a WhatsApp group. Just search university name and accommodation, you'll find something. Is that easy? It's literally that easy now.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. That's what I've seen a lot of students do. Like bang
Yeah,
on. And
yeah.
in chip design and sensing technologies, where do you see the biggest set of opportunities for the next generation, especially Indian engineers, Indian, let's say your juniors coming out of college now?
There's something which I really believe for very core fields like, let's say, mechanical, electronics, chemical, how people are doing, not people who develop fundamentals of AI, the mathematics. I would not misguide them by saying that, oh, you'll make something great out of undergrad. You need experience. You need experiential learning for that. But I think what you should chase is there are a lot of different fields which are opening up for biomedical. First, obviously, the toughest field. I started the toughest one. So the toughest field is obviously, making intensive care unit machines. For example, people who use ventilators, toughest to make, and the most expensive to make, but it's also very heavily used. Everyone needs them. So,
Yeah.
and that is where we are nowhere close. It's a very compact system which has a lot of integrated chip designing, a lot of system designing, a lot of mechanical design, a lot of biomedical engineering, everything combined together. So only the big names do it. I don't see any Indian company, Indian startup still trying to enter into that field. Now I'll go easy and hard. So I told you one hard. I'll tell you one easy. A lot of startups these days are trying to capture the market where people. So this has been the trend a lot of for last 5-6 years in US, and I see a lot of companies startups catching up in India. So they're trying to make devices which help you reduce your stress and tension and depression. So there are different nerves in the brain which you can capture. For example, just behind your ear there's a nerve called as a vagus nerve. So you can do a vagus nerve stimulation. You don't need an implantable device. You just put anything here. A lot of American companies are doing it. I now see a lot of Indian companies also doing it. You just put a vagus nerve stimulator here, and it promises to reduce your stress. So I'm not saying this is easy to make, easier than the
Yeah.
ventilator market. And this is a go ahead, a bigger market which people are trying to chase now. A lot of things I see. Then somewhere in the middle, I would say is devices more like lab testing devices. Like every today I wear Apple Watch, right? Why do I wear it? Every minute, whenever I'm in the gym, I can just tap on it and see that, oh, what's my heart rate, what's my heart rate, what's my ECG, everything this watch does. Accuracy is obviously a point of concern, but it does everything. So there's something called as lab on chip. So people are trying to develop devices which you can just, buy a simple kit and you can do all your tests. And this is a very heavily a field which needs very heavy, collaboration by chemical engineers and electronics engineers. A very good scope I see right now in India, because again, India is a numbers game.
Yeah.
So my dad has always told me one very simple thing. I really look up to my dad. He's like, Sarthak, the way to tap Indian market is make something for 10 rupees and sell it to and make something which for only 10 rupees, but which everyone wants to buy. And if a crore of people end up buying it, you are already playing the million game. You're already rich. Something which is more ubiquitous to everyone. So that kind of device, I think this lab on chip device is something which everyone needs. Everyone wants.
Yeah.
Why not? A very simple thing is like, I think 50 years ago, 60 years ago, no one would have imagined that you can have pregnancy test at home, which is so reliable. Today,
Yeah.
everyone has that. A very, very
Yeah.
common example. Makes
Yeah.
sense, right? Yeah.
Very, very cool. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen many, presentations, articles about very specific testing technology companies who claim to be able to test for early signs of various
Al-
difficult to diagnose diseases like Alzheimer's. Yeah,
And Alzheimer's is a very hot topic these days around the world. Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, if you can,
yeah.
and which makes sense because people. So the most
It's difficult to diagnose. Yeah,
Yeah, the most or I would say the least understood body, like the organ in our body, is a brain. People are trying to do research
absolutely.
over that, understand that signal. That signal firstly tough to as a very pure bioacquisition circuits engineer, very tough to capture. Very much, it has very much noise in it. Very tough to capture. Even if you capture it very well, it's very tough to process. It's very individual specific. It's very person specific. So that is, if you want to chase a race, let's say you are like, oh, I don't want to do something next 5 years, 15 years down the line, I'll do something crazy good. Tap, this is your market to tap. Neuro is your market to tap. If you have that patience.
Got it.
Makes
Hey,
sense.
if you were to give advice to Indian universities, what would your advice be around how they can prepare their own environments to be as good as the research environment offered by the likes of Purdue and top universities across the globe?
I would give you a few instances. One instance, obviously, a very easy comparison is between Purdue and my home university or any other. So I did interns in a lot of Indian universities as well. So I know like a culture that is going around. And then I would give you an instance from, let's say, a very, a university in Denmark or Netherlands, or let's say some other country, which is maybe not US, but still they're promoting people. So I think a lot of it also, and it happens in a lot of neighboring countries as well. I think a lot of it happens. I see a lot of people, they say that when your university needs to make your professors approachable in a way that they're like, oh yes, I will give you a letter of recommendation, yes, I will help you apply. For me, it was a journey which I had to do alone with my friends. But some universities, some of my friends, so I have a friend here, she's from Pakistan, so she always is like very proud of how her professors literally checked all her letter of recommendations, checked all her SOPs. And there's something which is not common in India. So one thing is
Yeah.
that. Second thing which I would very, which, because I used to, as a PhD student, I'm like, I have to take some courses, I have to teach some courses to fulfill some credits.
Yeah.
So I used to teach a lab course. I love teaching lab course. I used to teach a lab course, and something which I very interestingly realized, and I've seen this across different universities, whatever, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, all universities have this issue. And this is a very creaky story. You would go to a lab, and I've seen this for about 4 years. You would go to the lab, you would go to the lab instructor, it was like, I have to do experiment 2. He would give you, oh, these are 2 resistors. Give me 2 back. Don't do anything to them. Don't touch the oscilloscope. Don't burn the oscilloscope. Don't
Yeah.
tangle the probe. And when I see it here, so my lab advisor, who was like my professor, he was like, and when I came, I was like, Prof, these people, they handle these devices very roughly. I've been taught in a very conservative way. I was like, oh, they handle it very roughly. First day of my teaching, I was like, they handle it very roughly. What do I do? I cannot help them. And Prof was like, till the day they are burning it down by not a mischief or trying to do something interesting, I will pay for it. And that nag and that thing
Freedom.
which they,
Yeah.
yeah, $1 million device, and they can touch all the buttons. They can do whatever they want. They have all the access to all the labs 24/7. Not something which is very, it might be very weird. People will think he's asking such a big question. But it's a very small advice. Labs are not accessible 24/7 in India. How can you expect a student to do an experiment only once a week for 2 hours and expect him to remember that thing throughout his life? Not happening,
Yeah.
right? You need to keep the labs open for them whenever they want to go.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to get that experience in my lab, not in my course labs, but my undergrad advisor gave me, I used to have a lab key. Used to keep the lab key under his doormat. So only the people from the lab would know it. You'd go, take the lab key, go inside, do whatever you want, keep the key back. He would keep a check on us. But still, that freedom to do things, to tinker around, is
Yeah.
something which I'm thinking is pushing people away from, that core joy of hardware, be it any
Yeah.
field. I even
Absolutely right. I think
yeah, I can
yeah,
take that.
unless we fuel the curiosity, right? So that
Yeah,
freedom like that fuels curiosity. You said
exactly.
tinkering, right? You want
Yeah,
to. That's how you learn. Learn
yeah,
theory is limited in this way it can teach you. So
exactly.
fully
And
agree with you.
this is a very common example which happens throughout. I would use to give my smartphone to my younger brother. The way he's 6 years younger to me, his adaptability to these things is much better than what mine was, because he had a
Yeah,
full device to think on, do whatever you want, and that's very important, very
yeah,
very important, I think.
yeah. I agree with you. Right, Sarthak. Finally, last question for you. Let's say there's a 21-year-old engineering student today in India. What advice would Sarthak, a 23-year-old or 24-year-old, give to them right now with your 2.5, 2 years of experience at PhD?
Okay. Firstly, I would say that only PhD is a bigger. So again, doing a master's is a 2 years degree, right? But if you have to do a PhD, it's a bigger commitment. It's a 5 year commitment. You're very young. You're 21, 22. You don't know if it will work out for you. Either there are some people who have that amount of grit that if they get to it, they'll do it. Either if you know that you're that kind of person, or secondly, you are dead sure that you want to do a PhD. That is the only thing that will make you happy. Only commit your 5 years then. I have seen people really, really cry bad. I have seen people around me were like, I chose this. Now I'm 3.5 years inside. I don't, people like me, like, who don't have a master's also. Is like, I know a senior she was very close to me. She's like, I'm 3.5 years into my PhD. I don't have a master's. I have to complete the remaining years. Otherwise, I can't leave. I won't have any solidified degree. So only come into a PhD on if you are very sure. And second, and the biggest advice, which I think really works well, is manifest. Is work if you have a goal and you know that it should work. It's a advice which I talk about I don't want to take her name, but she was what carved me into coming here. She's from Bit Misra, and she got me into a very interesting habit. And I do it still. I got this habit from her 3.5 years ago. I do it every day, every day. I would wake up in the morning, look at the mirror, and say that, oh, so let's say when I was in my applying for colleges, I would say every day in the morning, look in the mirror and say, I would just look in the mirror and think, how would my life be once I'm in Purdue, or let's say once I'm in Stanford? And that happiness which I got from inside, that makes you drive ahead. That is a very, very silly advice, very silly. But
No, not at all.
it really works. It very interestingly works. And the third thing, so one was negative one was a positive one. The second one was very, very positive, very motivating. The third one I would very strongly say is that people will tell you that some things are not possible and it's not how they are meant to be, and you have to follow a fixed route. Trust me, we have such a huge population of people. Search. I think LinkedIn, people, it's a very, very very generic advice. LinkedIn, whatever I am, I found that senior who carved my life, and all throughout the seniors who even still carve my life, a lot of them through LinkedIn. Just approach, spam them. Even like, let's say I want to do whatever my next stage in my life is, I would just go on LinkedIn and say, oh, XYZ, let's say university name or my company name or something, and my kind of job or whatever I want to do. A list of people would come. Some people you would have some random connections with your college senior, something here and there. Some people you won't. Sometimes random strangers help you. Don't hesitate in asking.
You're right.
Very common thing. Steve Jobs said, right? If you don't ask, you never get an answer. Don't hesitate in asking. Ask for help. It's a chain. I used to ask my senior, the ma'am, but ma'am, why do you help me? She was like, because someone helped me, like I'm helping you, and now you will help someone because I helped you, and this becomes a chain. And that chain exists. It exists in this world. Believe in that. It will work out.
Yeah, well said. Sarthak, it's been great. Thank you so much for giving your time and the advice and the info that you've given in this discussion today. I'm sure are going to be super helpful for our viewers, for our audience. So really, really appreciate it and wish you all the very best for your PhD and for your future career. And do stay in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was great interacting with you. Thank you.